Welcome back everyone, and thank you for tuning in to the channel where we dive deep into the stories behind the coins in your pocket, the legends whispered about in collector circles, and the fascinating what-ifs that keep numismatics exciting. And today we are exploring one of the most talked about and controversial coin stories ever discussed online and among enthusiasts. The tale of a 1995 D Washington quarter that is said to be worth an astonishing $17 million, not because it is made of gold or because it belonged to a famous person, but because of a nearly unbelievable convergence of minting errors, production mistakes, rare circumstances, and theoretical possibilities that, when combined, have fueled one of the biggest value legends in modern coin collecting. And before we go any further, it is important to understand that this story is often presented as a hypothetical or legendary example used to explain how extreme rarity and error stacking could theoretically create a coin of unimaginable value, yet the reason it captures so much attention is because every individual error described in this story is real, documented, and known to exist on other coins, meaning that if they were ever all found together on a single genuine piece, the value would defy anything the hobby has ever seen. And that is why this narrative matters, because it teaches how errors are created, why collectors pay massive premiums for them, and how a seemingly ordinary coin like a 1995 D quarter could, under the rarest of conditions, become one of the most valuable coins on Earth. To understand the foundation of this legend, we need to start with the coin itself. The Washington quarter struck in Denver in 1995, a year when billions of quarters were produced for everyday circulation, making the date and mint mark combination normally very common and worth face value. Yet common coins are often the ones where errors hide in plain sight because they were produced in such massive quantities under intense pressure and speed, and the Denver Mint in the mid-1990s was operating high-speed presses designed to strike hundreds of coins per minute, which increases the likelihood of mistakes slipping through unnoticed. And one of the first errors that forms the backbone of the $17 million story is the concept of a wrong planchet error, specifically the idea that this quarter was not struck on a standard copper-nickel-clad quarter planchet but instead on an experimental or foreign alloy planchet, such as a silver planchet intended for proof testing, a high-density alloy used for vending machine trials, or even a planchet meant for a completely different denomination. And while wrong planchet errors are known and authenticated, they are already extremely valuable when confirmed, sometimes reaching tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars. But in this legendary scenario, the planchet is theorized to be a unique transitional alloy never officially released, one that was tested briefly at the Denver Mint and then discontinued, leaving only a handful of blanks that were supposed to be destroyed. And if one of those blanks were accidentally fed into the quarter press and struck with quarter dies, the resulting coin would instantly become a once-in-a-lifetime discovery. Layered on top of that is the second major mistake often described in this story: a double denomination error, where the quarter design is struck over an already struck coin, or partially struck design from another denomination, such as a dime or even a foreign coin. And genuine double denomination errors exist and are among the most fascinating mint mistakes because they show clear overlapping details from two different designs, proving that a previously struck coin somehow re-entered the minting process. And in the case of the legendary 1995 D quarter, the story imagines a scenario where the planchet was first struck as another denomination or experimental token, and then struck again as a quarter with strong, off-center alignment, leaving visible traces of both designs, an error so rare that even a single confirmed example would rewrite reference books. Another critical element in the $17 million valuation myth is the presence of an extreme double die error combined with rotational misalignment, meaning that the dies themselves were misengraved or misaligned during the hubbing process, creating dramatic doubling on the lettering, date, and devices, while also being rotated significantly off the normal orientation, perhaps by 90 or even 180 degrees. And while double dies and rotated dies individually are well known and collectible, the idea of both appearing together on the same coin, especially with bold, unmistakable doubling visible to the naked eye, adds another exponential layer of rarity. And collectors know that the more dramatic and undeniable an error is, the more desirable it becomes, particularly when it cannot be easily dismissed as damage or post-mint alteration. Then comes the possibility of a major off-metal strike combined with a broad strike or partial collar error, where the coin was struck without the retaining collar that normally forms the edge and reading, allowing the metal to spread outward uncontrollably, resulting in an oversized, distorted coin with missing or incomplete edges. And broad strikes are fascinating because they visually demonstrate a breakdown in the minting process, and when combined with other errors they become even more compelling, especially if the coin also shows multiple strike impressions indicating that it was struck more than once while misaligned, creating ghosted images and overlapping details that look almost surreal. Another factor that pushes this hypothetical coin into the stratosphere of value is the alleged presence of a mint mark anomaly, specifically a repunched or misplaced D mint mark that appears doubled, tilted, or even partially inverted, and while mint marks in 1995 were still punched into the dies by hand, making repunched mint marks possible, they are not common in later dates, and a dramatic example combined with all the other errors would be unprecedented, especially if the mint mark itself showed evidence of being punched into a die that was not intended for circulation, such as a test die or mule die. Speaking of mule errors, one of the most important and valuable components of this story is the concept that the 1995 D quarter could be a mule, meaning it was struck using a die combination that was never supposed to exist, such as a Washington quarter obverse paired with a reverse from a different series, a different year, or even a foreign or commemorative design, and genuine mules are among the rarest of all mint errors because they require a catastrophic breakdown in quality control, and when discovered they often become instant icons of the hobby, with some selling for hundreds of thousands or even millions. Depending on the circumstances, and the legendary valuation assumes that this quarter features a never-before-seen mule pairing that proves it came from an internal testing or experimental phase at the mint, making it historically significant as well as numismatically unique. Another layer often discussed is the possibility of a dramatic clipped planchet error combined with lamination flaws and metal impurities, where parts of the coin are literally missing or peeling due to defects in the metal strip from which the planchet was cut. And while clipped planchets and laminations are relatively common individually, they become much more valuable when they intersect critical design elements, such as the date, mint mark, or major lettering, and when they appear alongside other major errors they contribute to the narrative of a perfect storm of mistakes, each one independently rare, but collectively almost impossible. Then there is the discussion of strike quality, where the coin is described as having both weak and overstruck areas, indicating uneven pressure during striking, possibly due to a malfunctioning press or improperly set dies, and such inconsistencies can reveal a lot about what was happening on the mint floor at the moment the coin was made, turning it into a snapshot of industrial failure frozen in metal. Another theoretical factor in the $17 million legend is provenance, the documented history of the coin from the moment it left the mint to the moment it was discovered, and in this scenario the coin is said to have been found in circulation, perhaps in pocket change or a bank roll, adding to its mystique because it implies that one of the greatest mint errors ever created somehow slipped through all inspections and spent years unnoticed. And provenance is crucial because collectors are willing to pay far more for a coin with a clear, traceable history that confirms its authenticity and eliminates doubts of tampering or fabrication. Authentication itself plays a massive role in this valuation story, because for a coin like this to reach a multi-million-dollar price, it would need to be certified by multiple top-tier grading services, examined by error specialists, metallurgists, and historians, and proven beyond any doubt to be genuine, with metal composition tests confirming the wrong planchet, die studies confirming the doubled and mule characteristics, and microscopic analysis ruling out any form of post-mint alteration. And the cost and rigor of such analysis alone would be immense. Further adding to the legend, the story also factors in market psychology, because value is not determined solely by rarity but by demand. Next, 1997 P quarter dollar. Today we are diving into one of the most fascinating, controversial, and endlessly discussed legends in modern numismatics, the story of a 1997 P Washington quarter that is said to be worth an incredible $15 million, a value so shocking that it seems impossible at first glance. Yet a number that continues to circulate online and in collector discussions because of the sheer number of rare errors, minting mistakes, and extraordinary possibilities that could theoretically converge into a single coin, transforming a common pocket change item into a once-in-a-lifetime artifact. And while this story is often told as a hypothetical extreme example rather than a confirmed auction record, every individual error described in this narrative is real, documented, and known to exist on other coins, which is precisely why this legend persists and why it captures so much attention. Because it teaches us how the minting process works, how it can fail, and how value in the coin world is created not just by age or metal content but by rarity, documentation, and the human fascination with mistakes frozen in metal. To understand why the 1997 P quarter is at the center of this story, we first need to look at the coin itself, the Washington quarter struck at the Philadelphia Mint in 1997. A year when hundreds of millions of quarters were produced for circulation, making the date and mint mark combination extremely common under normal circumstances, but common coins are often the most fertile ground for errors because of the massive production volume and the relentless speed of the presses, and in the late 1990s the Philadelphia Mint was operating under intense demand, producing coins around the clock using high-speed machinery that left little room for human intervention once production began, which means that when something went wrong it could go wrong in spectacular ways. One of the foundational elements of the $15 million legend is the idea that this 1997 P quarter was struck on a wrong planchet, and not just any wrong planchet but one of extraordinary significance, such as a silver planchet intended for proof coinage, a foreign planchet meant for another country's currency, or even an experimental alloy planchet created for internal testing that was never intended to leave the mint. And wrong planchet errors are among the most dramatic and visually striking mistakes because they often result in coins that look and feel completely different from what they should, with incorrect weight, color, thickness, and even sound when dropped, and when authenticated these errors can sell for tens or even hundreds of thousands of dollars on their own. But in this legendary scenario the planchet is theorized to be a unique transitional or experimental composition, perhaps part of research into alternative metals or vending machine compatibility, making it not just a wrong planchet but a one-of-a-kind survivor of a cancelled project. And if such a planchet were accidentally struck with quarter dies and released into circulation, the resulting coin would instantly become historically significant as well as numismatically priceless. Adding to this is the possibility of a dramatic off-metal strike combined with a partial or missing clad layer, where the outer copper-nickel layers fail to bond properly to the core or are entirely absent, exposing raw metal beneath, and while missing clad layer errors are known and collectible, they become exponentially more valuable when paired with other major anomalies, especially if the exposed core or unusual surface reveals clues about experimental materials or production flaws. Another major component of the $15 million story is the idea of a powerful double die error, created during the die hubbing process when the die receives multiple misaligned impressions from the hub, resulting in strong, clear doubling on the design elements, and double die. Quarters from the 1990s do exist and are sought after, but the legend imagines a doubling so dramatic that it affects the date, the word liberty, the motto "In God We Trust," and even Washington's profile, with separation lines and notching visible to the naked eye, leaving no doubt that the doubling is genuine and not the result of machine doubling or wear. And such a bold double die alone would command enormous interest and value, but in this story it is only one piece of a much larger puzzle. Then there is the concept of die rotation, where the obverse and reverse dies are misaligned relative to each other, causing the reverse design to appear rotated when the coin is flipped vertically, and while minor rotations are fairly common, extreme rotations of 90 degrees or more are far rarer and far more desirable. And in this hypothetical 1997 P quarter the rotation is said to be extreme and perfectly documented, suggesting a serious setup error at the press that somehow went unnoticed long enough for at least one coin to escape, adding yet another layer of mechanical failure to the narrative. Another element often discussed is a broad strike or partial collar error, where the retaining collar that normally shapes the edge of the coin fails or is absent during striking, allowing the metal to expand outward, creating an oversized coin with distorted edges, missing or incomplete reading, and sometimes an almost melted appearance. And broad strikes are visually dramatic because they show how the metal flows under pressure, and when combined with other errors they create a coin that looks completely unlike anything intended for circulation, making it instantly recognizable and highly collectible. The legend also includes the possibility of a multiple strike error, where the coin is struck more than once by the dies while being misaligned between strikes, resulting in overlapping images, ghosted details, and distorted lettering, and such errors can occur when a coin fails to eject properly and is struck again, and while multiple strike errors are known, they are rarely seen in combination with other major anomalies. making their inclusion in this story a key factor in pushing the theoretical value higher. One of the most intriguing aspects of the $15 million valuation is the idea that the 1997 P quarter could be a mule, a coin struck with an obverse die and a reverse die that were never intended to be paired together, such as a Washington quarter obverse combined with a reverse from another denomination, another year, or even a different series altogether. And mule errors are among the rarest and most celebrated mistakes in U.S. coinage because they represent a complete breakdown in die management and quality control, and when discovered they often become instant legends, studied and referenced for decades. And in this scenario the mule pairing is imagined to be something entirely unprecedented, perhaps involving a prototype reverse or a die created for internal testing, making the coin not just an error but a window into hidden aspects of mint operations. Another layer in this narrative is the presence of a significant mintmark anomaly. Even though the Philadelphia Mint did not traditionally use a mintmark on quarters during this period, the story speculates about an anomalous mark or remnant of a mintmark punch, perhaps from a reused die or an experimental process, and while such a feature would be highly controversial and require extraordinary evidence, its mere possibility adds to the mystique and theoretical uniqueness of the coin. The legend further includes metallurgical anomalies such as improper alloy mixing, resulting in unusual color, density, or magnetic properties. And metallurgical testing in such a case would reveal inconsistencies that could only be explained by experimental or flawed production, making the coin a subject of intense scientific as well as numismatic interest. Surface anomalies such as severe die cracks, retained cut errors, and shattered die effects are also part of the story, where large portions of the design are distorted or missing due to broken dies, and while die cracks and cuts are not uncommon individually, a massive retained cut affecting major design elements on a modern quarter would be extraordinary, especially if it could be linked to the final stages of a die's life, providing insight into mint maintenance practices. Another factor that dramatically increases the theoretical value is the concept of provenance, the documented history of the coin from the moment it left the mint to the moment it was discovered, and in this legend the coin is said to have been found in circulation, perhaps in a roll of quarters from a bank or in everyday pocket change, which adds a layer of romance and accessibility to the story, reinforcing the idea that incredible discoveries can still happen to ordinary people, and if such a find were thoroughly documented with witnesses, photographs, and contemporaneous records, it would significantly enhance credibility and value. Authentication is a critical part of this narrative because for a coin with such extraordinary claims to reach a valuation of $15 million it would need to withstand the most intense scrutiny imaginable, involving multiple top-tier grading services, independent error specialists, metallurgists, and historians, each confirming different aspects of the coin's uniqueness, from metal composition to die characteristics to strike anomalies, and the consensus of experts would be essential in establishing legitimacy, as the market for ultra-rare coins is highly sensitive to authenticity and documentation. Next, 1998 P quarter dollar. Today we are diving into one of the most talked about and sensational tales in modern numismatics, the story of the 1998 P Washington quarter, a coin that is said to be worth an astonishing $12 million, not because of any precious metal content or historical significance in the traditional sense, but because of a remarkable combination of minting errors, anomalies, and theoretical possibilities that, if all present on a single coin, would make it one of the rarest and most valuable coins in existence, a coin whose value defies logic to most people but which demonstrates the incredible complexity and unpredictability of the minting process. And while the tale is often presented as more of a legendary extreme rather than a documented auction result, each of the errors described individually are real, documented occurrences, and the fascination lies in imagining a coin that combines them all, an impossible-to-replicate convergence that would be a once-in-a-lifetime find, capturing the imagination of collectors, investors, and anyone interested in rare objects. And the story begins with the coin itself, a 1998 Washington quarter struck at the Philadelphia Mint, which during that year produced hundreds of millions of quarters for everyday circulation, making the date and mint mark extremely common. Yet the very commonness of these coins actually sets the stage for potential errors, because with mass production and high-speed presses operating continuously, the likelihood of mistakes, though still small, is non-zero, and when mistakes do occur they often go unnoticed, slipped into circulation where they may be discovered decades later by a lucky collector, which is exactly the scenario that fuels the legend of this $12 million coin. The first major element of this story is the concept of a wrong planchet error, where the coin was allegedly struck on a planchet not intended for normal circulation quarters, such as an experimental alloy, a silver-proof planchet, a foreign coin planchet, or a transitional composition being tested at the mint for research purposes, and wrong planchet errors are among the most dramatic and visually striking types of mint mistakes because they affect the coin's color, weight, thickness, and even the sound when dropped, creating a piece that looks and feels entirely different from a standard quarter. And while wrong planchets do exist and have fetched high prices on the market, the legend of the 1998 P quarter imagines a planchet that is unique, possibly one of only a few ever produced, accidentally fed into a circulation press and struck with the correct dies, resulting in a coin of unprecedented rarity, one that would instantly become historically significant as well as numismatically invaluable. Layered onto this possibility is the concept of a broad strike or partial collar error, where the retaining collar that normally shapes the edge of the coin fails or is absent during striking, allowing the metal to flow outward, creating an oversized coin with distorted edges, missing or incomplete reading, and sometimes a noticeably warped or irregular shape. And broad strikes are already highly collectible because they visually illustrate a dramatic failure in the minting process, but when combined with other major errors such as wrong planchets or doubled dies, they contribute to a narrative of an extraordinarily rare convergence of anomalies that pushes value into the multi-million-dollar range. Another significant aspect of the coin's legendary value is the presence of a doubled die, created during the hubbing process when a die receives multiple misaligned impressions, resulting in noticeable doubling on the design elements including the date, the lettering, and even the portrait of Washington. And while doubled dies are known and collected, the legend describes a doubling so extreme and clear that it would affect multiple critical areas of the coin, making it immediately recognizable to collectors and leaving no doubt about its authenticity. And the degree of doubling imagined in this scenario is far beyond typical examples, creating what would be considered a coin with bold, unmistakable doubled features that could command extreme attention in the marketplace. Added to this is the possibility of die rotation, where the obverse and reverse dies are misaligned relative to one another, so that when the coin is flipped vertically, the reverse appears rotated, with a rotation of 90, 180, or even greater degrees. And while minor rotations are fairly common, extreme rotations on a modern coin, particularly when combined with other errors, are exceedingly rare, and they dramatically increase collector interest because they demonstrate a significant mechanical or procedural error at the mint, effectively creating a coin that is visually disorienting and historically unique. Another layer of the legend involves the potential for multiple strike errors, where the coin is struck more than once while misaligned between strikes, producing overlapping designs, ghosted images, doubled features, and other distortions. And although multiple strikes occur on occasion, their appearance alongside other major anomalies such as broad strikes, doubled dies, and wrong planchets would be almost unprecedented. Further elevating the rarity and theoretical value of this coin, the story also includes the possibility of a mint mark anomaly, where the Philadelphia Mint's normally absent mint mark in 1998 might appear erroneously, repunched, or partially visible, perhaps from a reused die or experimental punch. And such anomalies, while rare, are of intense interest to collectors, especially when paired with other major errors, because they suggest a serious departure from standard production procedures. Adding another layer of intrigue and potential value to the coin, metallurgical anomalies are another critical component of the legend, with the idea that improper alloy mixing, variations in metal composition, or impurities could create unexpected colors, densities, or surface textures. And while these features are often subtle on their own, when combined with multiple strike, doubled die, broad strike, and wrong planchet errors, they contribute to a coin that is unlike anything else known, creating what numismatists would consider a perfect storm of anomalies, each one individually rare but collectively nearly impossible. Surface anomalies such as large die cracks, retained cuds, or shattered die effects are also envisioned in the story, where portions of the design are missing, distorted, or extruded due to die breakage. And while minor die cracks are common, a major retained cut affecting critical elements of the coin's design would be highly dramatic. and in combination with the other errors imagined in this legendary 1998 P quarter, would push the coin into a category of exceptional historical and collectible significance, essentially making it a record-setting modern mint error. Provenance is another key factor that elevates the theoretical value, because the story posits that the coin was discovered in circulation, perhaps in a bankroll or pocket change, highlighting the possibility that the world's rarest modern coin could exist in the most ordinary places, and documented provenance, with evidence showing where and how the coin was found, dramatically increases collector confidence and enhances value because it rules out suspicions of tampering or artificial creation, effectively turning a lucky find into a verifiable numismatic treasure. Authentication plays a crucial role in the legend as well, because for a coin with such extraordinary claims to command $12 million, it would require scrutiny from the top grading services, expert error specialists, metallurgists, and historians, with each element carefully examined and verified, from metal composition and die characteristics to strike anomalies and surface features, and the consensus of multiple independent experts would be essential in establishing the coin's authenticity, as the market for ultra-rare coins is extremely sensitive to even the slightest doubt about provenance or legitimacy. Market psychology is another contributing factor, because collectors and investors are not merely buying metal or age, they are buying the story and the idea of unprecedented rarity, and the notion of a modern circulating coin commanding millions of dollars challenges conventional thinking and draws attention not only from traditional collectors but from museums, investors, and institutions seeking one-of-a-kind objects, driving competition and inflating potential value. Legal and ethical considerations also add intrigue to the story, as a coin that may have originated as a test or experimental piece could theoretically spark debate over government ownership or historical significance, and such considerations often enhance media coverage and collector interest, further boosting the perceived value of the coin. The $12 million figure itself is generally presented as a projection based on comparisons with other ultra-rare coins, adjusted for uniqueness, error stacking, and theoretical scarcity, rather than an actual recorded sale. And while no modern quarter has sold for that amount, the combination of wrong planchet, broad strike, double die rotation, multiple strikes, mint mark anomaly, metallurgical irregularities, major die defects, and documented provenance creates a coin that could plausibly exceed existing valuation records, situating it at the pinnacle of modern coin collecting. Last, 1988 D quarter dollar. Today we are delving into one of the most sensational and widely discussed tales in modern numismatics, the story of the 1988 D Washington quarter, a coin that is said to be worth an astonishing $11 million, a figure that seems almost impossible for a coin from such a modern era. Yet this story captivates collectors, investors, and enthusiasts alike because of the remarkable combination of errors, anomalies, and hypothetical scenarios that could theoretically converge to create a coin of unparalleled rarity, a coin whose value is not derived from precious metals, historical association, or age, but from a once-in-a-lifetime series of minting mistakes, unusual circumstances, and documented possibilities that make it a singular object in the entire history of U.S. coinage. And while this narrative is often presented as legendary or theoretical rather than a confirmed auction result, every individual error it describes is real, documented, and collectible, which makes imagining a coin that combines them all both thrilling and educational, because it teaches us how the minting process works, how errors occur, and how rarity, authenticity, and market psychology converge to create extreme value. And the story begins with the coin itself, a 1988 Washington quarter struck at the Denver Mint, a year when hundreds of millions of these quarters were produced for circulation, making the date and mint mark extremely common under normal circumstances. Yet it is precisely this commonness that sets the stage for potential errors, because mass production, high-speed presses, and human oversight create opportunities for mistakes, and when mistakes happen they can remain unnoticed for years, sometimes slipping into circulation where they may be discovered decades later by a lucky collector, which is exactly the scenario that fuels the legend of this $11 million coin. The first major element of the story is the concept of a wrong planchet error, where the coin was allegedly struck on a planchet not intended for circulation quarters, such as an experimental alloy, a silver-proof planchet, a foreign coin planchet, or a transitional composition under testing at the mint. and wrong planchet errors are among the most visually striking mistakes because they affect color, thickness, weight, and even the sound of the coin when dropped, making it feel entirely different from a normal quarter. And while such errors exist and are highly sought after, the legend of the 1988 D quarter imagines a planchet so rare that it could be unique, accidentally struck with quarter dies, and released into circulation, creating a coin of extreme numismatic significance and historical interest, because it would be a surviving artifact from an experiment that was never meant to leave the mint. Adding to this hypothetical scenario is the possibility of a broad strike or partial collar error, where the retaining collar that normally shapes the edge of the coin fails or is absent during striking, allowing the metal to flow outward, resulting in an oversized coin with irregular or incomplete edges and sometimes distorted reading. And broad strike errors are visually dramatic and highly collectible on their own, but when combined with other major anomalies like wrong planchet, double dies, or multiple strikes, they contribute to a convergence of errors that pushes the theoretical value into the millions, making the coin a once-in-a-lifetime discovery if all these anomalies were present on the same piece. Another critical factor in the legend is the presence of a double die, created during the hubbing process when a die receives multiple misaligned impressions from the hub, resulting in doubling on the design elements, including the date, the lettering, and Washington's portrait. And while double dies are known and collected, the 1988 D quarter in this story is described as having extreme, bold doubling so dramatic that it affects multiple critical areas of the coin, making it instantly recognizable and leaving no doubt about its authenticity. And such a pronounced double die, combined with other anomalies, would be among the most valuable of modern coin errors. Die rotation is also a key component, where the obverse and reverse dies are misaligned, causing the reverse to appear rotated by 90, 180, or even more degrees when the coin is flipped vertically. And although minor rotations are relatively common, extreme rotations on a modern quarter are exceedingly rare and highly prized, especially when paired with other major errors, because they indicate a serious procedural failure during striking, creating a coin that is not only unusual in appearance but historically significant as a record of mint operations. Multiple strike errors are another imagined anomaly, where the coin is struck more than once while misaligned between strikes, producing overlapping designs, ghosted images, and distorted lettering. And while multiple strikes occasionally occur, the combination with broad strike, double die, and wrong planchet errors would be nearly unprecedented, making the coin an extraordinary example of a compounding of errors, each one rare but collectively almost impossible, which is precisely what drives the theoretical $11 million valuation. The legend also includes the possibility of a mint mark anomaly, in this case a repunched, misaligned, or partially visible D mint mark, perhaps from a reused die, experimental punch, or an internal testing procedure. And while such anomalies are individually collectible, their presence alongside multiple other errors creates a coin of extraordinary uniqueness, adding historical intrigue and significantly increasing potential value. Metallurgical anomalies further enhance the narrative, with improper alloy mixing, unexpected impurities, or inconsistencies in metal composition creating unusual colors, densities, or surface textures. And while such anomalies are subtle on their own, when combined with other major errors they contribute to a coin unlike anything else known, a piece that would be studied not only by collectors but also by metallurgists and historians interested in mint operations and experimental processes. Surface anomalies such as die cracks, retained cuds, and shattered die effects are another critical component, where large portions of the design are missing, distorted, or extruded due to die failure. And while minor die cracks are common, major retained cuds or die breakage affecting key elements of the design would be dramatic and highly collectible. And when imagined in combination with all the other anomalies on the 1988 D quarter, they create a coin that could be considered one of the most extraordinary modern mint errors ever conceived. Provenance is another major factor that drives value, because the story suggests that the coin was found in circulation, perhaps in a roll of quarters or even loose change, highlighting the romantic idea that one of the rarest coins in existence could be discovered by an ordinary person in the most mundane circumstances. And when documented with evidence, including photographs, records of discovery, and perhaps even witness statements, provenance enhances both credibility and market value, transforming a remarkable find into an unquestionable treasure. Authentication is critical, because for a coin with this many extreme claims to be valued at $11 million, it would require rigorous examination by multiple top-tier grading services, error specialists, metallurgists, and historians, each confirming the authenticity of the wrong planchet, double die, broad strike, multiple strikes, die rotation, mint mark anomaly, metallurgical irregularities, and surface defects. And the consensus of these experts would establish legitimacy and confidence in the coin, which is essential for a piece purported to be among the most valuable in modern numismatics. Market psychology also contributes to the theoretical valuation, because collectors and investors are purchasing not just metal but the story, rarity, and extreme uniqueness. And the notion of a modern circulating coin commanding multi-million-dollar attention challenges conventional expectations and attracts interest not only from seasoned numismatists but also from museums, private collectors, and investors seeking a one-of-a-kind object. Potentially driving competition and inflating value, legal and ethical considerations add another layer of intrigue, as a coin that might have originated as a test or experimental piece could prompt questions about government ownership or historical claims, and such debates can further enhance media attention and collector interest, increasing the coin's perceived importance and value. The $11 million figure itself is generally presented as a projection, derived from comparisons to other ultra-rare coins, adjusted for uniqueness, the stacking of multiple errors, and scarcity, rather than as a documented sale, and while no modern quarter has officially sold for such a sum, the combination of wrong planchet, broad strike, double die, die rotation, multiple strikes, mint mark anomaly, metallurgical irregularities, and extreme die defects creates a coin that plausibly could exceed all existing valuation records, situating it at the pinnacle of modern coin collecting. The story also serves an educational purpose, illustrating the complexity of the minting process, how each step, from metal preparation and planchet cutting to die creation, press setup, and quality control, carries the potential for rare errors.